Hey guys, how's it going? So today the video I want to make is about how to get cast shadows in your art. Something that I've seen a lot of amateur artists work is that they have shading and shadows for the form of whatever it is that they're painting or drawing, but they leave out the cast shadows. And the cast shadows are one of the things that really help make it feel realistic and feel like it's a real object with its own three-dimensional form. So what that means, I have here, let's see, this is what it looks like without any cast shadows anywhere. So all of the shadows here are just form shadows, which means if you were to go outside and hold your hand up in the sunlight, the bottom of your hand would be in shadow because that part of the form isn't being hit by light, while the top would be in the sunlight, okay? So you can see here along the creature, this dinosaur, his stomach, right? Under his jaw, right? Places where it starts to, the form starts to round away from the sunlight, it gets darker, right? That's a form shadow. And most artists that I come in contact with seem to be able to generally grasp that, right? And be able to create that and replicate it in their work. But there's other types of shadows. There's also cast shadows. Now, a cast shadow is when you go outside and you hold your hand up in the sunlight, and it's the shadow that's being cast on the ground from your hand, right? Type of shadow you use to make shadow puppets, stuff like that. And a lot of times, objects will cast shadows on themselves. So, I'm going to turn on cast shadows on a separate layer here. And you can see, if I go back and forth, that, for example, under this eye right here, let me get something I can mark with here. So, over here underneath the eye, for example, there should be a cast shadow from this ridge that makes up his eyebrow, right? Or underneath these fins, okay? But there's not. Now, if I turn that on, you can see how much more of a difference it makes. It makes it feel much more realistic. There's a lot more depth to the painting, okay? And that's something that you want to keep in mind. Now, in order to make this look good, you don't just want to randomly be drawing shadows under everything. First, in order to determine where cast shadows go, and if you even need any, you need to determine what direction the light is coming from, right? So, in this painting, the light is coming from about like this, right? From above and slightly to the left, okay? And that's how I'm determining where my shadows are coming from, okay? So, the way you can determine how long or where the shadow is going to go is if you have, let's see, let me draw it out here really quick. So, let's say this is my object, okay? And here's the plane that it's going to be casting a shadow on, and my light source is right here, okay? To figure out how long the shadow needs to be or where it's going to end, you can take the light source and draw a line from the light source through to the object, right? The tip of that object. And so the end of that shadow is going to be wherever it meets the plane, okay? So if it's this tall, right here, then the shadow is going to be this long, right? So if my light source is up here somewhere, for example, it's obviously farther than that, right? It's off the page. But the way I could determine how long the shadow is going to be, or at least roughly, would be to draw a line from wherever that light source is going to be, right? And then I could figure out what the shadow was based off of from that point to this point. And if that line were to continue, right, then I would know that's how long I needed to make this shadow from the base of that spine, okay? Now, like I said, obviously my light source is really far off the page, so you're going to have to estimate or guess, but that should give you a good idea of where the light source is coming from, how long your shadows need to be, and so on and so forth. The closer your light source is going to be to your object, the longer the shadows are going to be, and the more of an angle it's at, it'll also make it longer. So, for example, these guys, the spines right here, they're at a pretty steep angle, and so the shadow is fairly large, right? However, this spine right here on his head, it's almost straight up and down, and it's basically facing the light source, so there's no shadow at all, right? Same with this one, it's a fairly large shadow because the object that's casting the shadow is almost facing directly perpendicular to the light source, and so it's going to cast a pretty big shadow. So it can seem complex and overwhelming at first, but don't let it get the best of you, right? You really just have to be aware of it, right? So next time you're painting something that has multiple facets to it, just ask yourself, are any of these things, would these be casting a shadow on my object? Or, maybe they're not, right? You don't always have to have that, but a lot of times there's at least one or two to be aware of. And just to show you again what it looks like without that, it just feels a lot more flat. It looks a little bit more cartoony without as much depth, right? And I mean, there should be cast shadows under here, underneath his leg, right? Under this arm, casting a shadow on itself, right? A little bit under the jaw, like I said, under this eyebrow, under all of these fins, right? And like I said, when we can pull that on there, it feels much more realistic. Now, if this is something that you really want to learn more about, or it's something you struggle with, I definitely recommend checking out my course on Udemy on light and color. It goes into all of the details of everything you need to know about light and color, from highlights to shadows, reflected light, ambient occlusion, all of that stuff. And it goes really, really in depth. It's several hours long, over 6 hours of really awesome content. And like I said, if it's something you're interested in, definitely check it out. Link is in the description. And normally, courses run anywhere from $80 to $150. But for any of my subscribers, you can take any of my courses at any time for just $12. So, like I said, take advantage of that. It's really awesome. And once again, thanks for all your guys' support. Leave a like, subscribe.